pivot, dominate.
Can you do it with an echo? Dominate.
Dominate. Is that pretty good? I don't know. We'll watch the playback and I'll feel really ridiculous that I did that. So we're going to start off. This is Pivot, Dominate. We're really here to talk about pivoting in your startup or in your business. And before we get started, we're going to introduce ourselves just so you have some idea who the heck is talking. So I'm Paul Prinz. That's my sweet picture up there. I like vests, apparently, because I'm wearing one there, too. I run a company called FreshFine. It's a SaaS-based company. It's our business model. And we serve the nonprofit market with a CRM-style tool that's custom-tailored to their needs. It's everything from communications and email to event management, contribution management, member management, amongst other things that are neat. I started it about 4 years ago. 2 years ago, we launched. And I'm currently a portfolio company of the Mesa Group. If you guys are doing startups, I'd highly encourage you guys to check them out. It's basically a CEO mentorship program here in the Twin Cities where software CEOs mentor folks in kind of the startup stage, help you work through some of the stuff we're talking about today. Previously, I ran a company called Midwest Skier. We did everything from online social platform to event production, film production, wrote for magazines, things like that. It was lots of fun. So. I also brought crashed ice to North America, so you're welcome, people. So, yeah, you guys might know what that is, I guess. So,
Michael Noble, our company, you can see a couple of us around here, is called Approve. It's basically, we're trying to change the way businesses buy things, purchase things. Picture PayPal, that user experience, but for business spending. It allows people to check out and buy things without using a personal card or a corporate card. So it eliminates all expense reports, all requisition forms, all forms of credit card abuse, security issues, everything. It's basically our IP is around me letting you buy something with my money. Prior to that, yeah? No. Like I'm buying a flight on Travelocity, I'm checking out a Sam's Club online, I'm downloading software from Microsoft for my business, and typically I'm doing that. I might fill out a requisition form, I might use a personal card and get reimbursement, I might file an expense report with a client. We kind of eliminate that whole thing. Prior to that, I was part of the original team that started LimeWire, which a lot of you know, that brought down a lot of college networks. Lime Brokerage was another success we had out of an incubator called the Lime Group. We had a bunch of failures. Zambu we raised a bunch of money for, and it ended up being sold shortly after I left. And Niche was a startup that I did last year that we killed. So I'm gonna focus my presentation on the ultimate pivot, which is killing something. Really, what are the signs that especially taking a step back now and seeing the reaction we're getting with Approve versus when I was going through Niche and building it, I should have killed it a lot earlier. And, this is kind of a post-mortem on that. And to me, that's the ultimate pivot is actually when to kill something. So how many people here are doing a startup in the middle, thinking about it, whatnot? So we'd love for this to be as interactive as possible. We're here to share our stories and what we've learned. But if someone here is going through an issue with their business model or a customer reaction or you can't find a co-founder or whatever it is, please air it and we can try to hash it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Software well. There we go.
It's mine. So when to pivot? What are the signs that are kind of happening out there that tell you you are doing something wrong? So again, the market is an evil mistress. With Niche, I had trouble explaining it in a half an hour. I couldn't explain it to my mother. I couldn't explain it to my father. I couldn't explain it to potential customers. The concept was a social network for small business, and it was a very kind of big thing. My two focus points now in life, someone gave me this advice. Doing a startup is about two things. Tattoo these on your forehead. Focus and pain. And niche solved no pain. Zero. It did not solve a problem. It was cool. It was Facebook, right? Facebook doesn't necessarily solve a problem. If it disappeared tomorrow, we could live without it. Startups don't have that luxury. If you have this very small window to do something, you need to solve some pain to get someone's attention, and future slides, to get someone to actually pay for it. So the difference is, the market was just screaming at me that niche was not going to work, that I was going to need gigantic scale, that I wasn't solving this particular problem. We tried small pivots, but to be honest, the art of killing something is difficult. There's a lot of hubris in one's own idea, right? We all kind of have it. You think your idea is great. It's not up to you to think it's great. It's the customer, right? They need to tell you. We did not go out and do enough market research. I did not take the idea out early enough and talk to enough people, ask them if they'd pay for it, ask them if they'd use for it. It takes courage to do that. It takes courage for them to spit in your face, basically, and say, I would never use this. You need to have that courage. You need to have the courage to share your idea and get that kind of market feedback even before you go out and do it. Thank you.
All right, I'll stick with external forces on the top here as well. I'm going to have a little bit of a more upbeat approach. My startup's doing great. We're growing every month. Woo! We're going faster now than we did a year ago, which is awesome. I mean, those are the things you hope for when you start a company. Like I said, we're SaaS-based, so it's really easy to track that. It's like, we have more subscribers and more revenue. We're growing. For some of you that maybe your model's a little different, that might be a little bit more difficult to track on a month-to-month basis. So to contrast Michael's approach, where he's talking about comparing niche with approve, I'm going to talk about really my experience with Freshvine and as well my experience with Midwest Skier. Midwest Skier was a really unique thing, and when it happened, there was just a lot of need that I unexpectedly stumbled into, which is kind of the best thing you can have happen when you're doing a startup. When all of a sudden it's like there's just opportunity everywhere. People used to throw money at me, and this is when I was in like high school, to put on events, run events, do things for them. I was the only sponsored event producer with Red Bull in North America, which is pretty cool for a 17-year-old. Go to the bank, cashing like $1,000 checks from Red Bull. Made you look pretty awesome. When you lived in your parents' house, I guess. So the external forces within the market, there's always going to be either an acceptance or a rejection of your idea. And the trick is to start to tune your ear to that. And Michael touched on it, but we love our own ideas so much that you become defensive. And I'd say the number one thing, if you get anything out of this first part here, is if you feel defensive about your idea needs to change. Straight up. I mean, that means that people are telling you it's a bad idea and you feel like you just don't get it. It's like, well, either you're terrible at explaining it, which is going to be a really hard time when you get to sales, or it's just not really quite where it needs to be yet. And that's a really difficult pill to swallow. And one of the things that Michael and I talk about, because we'll bounce ideas off each other, is really once you kind of like talk about an idea, it becomes its own entity. It really isn't yours anymore. And to allow it to change and to allow others input on that process is really hard. But I'd say from the external forces, when you feel like you're defending it a lot, it's probably a good indicator that somebody outside of you is trying to tell you it needs some refinement or tweaking, or in some cases, it just is never going to work. There's a lot of great ideas that never work. You don't hear about them simply because they never worked and they just disappear into the night. But most startups don't actually make it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else on the top part. But the problem with that is, and I hear that from people at times, and it's an educational issue then. Then you're not explaining it well enough to people that they understand the inherent value in it. And it may be that the language isn't developed enough yet for that. But that's your job then as the founder or a co-founder of a startup, is you have to explain your idea well enough and concisely enough that somebody gets it and goes, wow, that is a great idea.
I've never bought that argument. I actually went to a weekend seminar. I got paid to invent cleaning products. This marketing company took us away and to a B&B, and I signed my name on this piece of paper, and they paid us, and I got a massage or something. They put us through all these brainstorming exercises to invent cleaning products. And some people were there inventing like robots with lasers that zap dust bunnies and stuff. Like they were not doing things like taking the current market state into, in any form of relevancy, the amount of technology, the cost of something. I mean, if you're inventing something that's not going to work for 10 years, well, move on to a new idea. That's kind of what I think.
Going on to the number 2 here, internal forces. Yeah, your team, about that. Your team is a huge part of your startup. I was a solopreneur at first. I've built a team around myself since then. And as I've added each person to our team, there's 4 of us now, it changes, and it has to change what we're doing a little bit, because they have unique gifts and abilities and skill sets that they bring to what we're doing. And if as a team you're not incorporating that and understanding the value that your new member really brings, you're missing out. And that's not going to be a drastic shift, most likely, because if you're hiring somebody that causes a drastic shift, that's probably a whole different conversation that needs to be happening. But you need to be aware that the team you have plays a big role in the product that you're going to come out with and the service that you're going to provide to people. And so just be aware that your team, adding people, losing people. We had a competitor of ours, they actually closed shop next week on the 15th. And what happened was, they'd been around for like 8 years, 9 years. They had one software engineer. Nobody else had any technical background. Nobody else knew how the code worked, and the guy left. And they were at a certain point in the company's life where the people that were remaining just didn't have the energy to want to invest in finding somebody and keeping it going. So they closed shop.
I would say new idea, great pivots can come from new people being exposed to your idea as well. So if your idea is stuck, it's stuck in a specific market, it's stuck in a specific level of development, I mean, you really have to get out there and talk to a lot more people. And adding the right people on your team can take what you built that sat on the ground and did nothing and turn it into something pretty great. So don't be afraid to be open to those new ideas.
Absolutely. And we'll move on to life forces. And if this isn't obvious, you actually matter a lot to your startup as one of the founders, as somebody running the startup. I actually closed down Midwest Skier because I was in college and I was looking at it and I was looking at the numbers and I was like, wow, this is a great kind of hobby business for me when I'm still kind of living off the parents' dime and doing school and some of that stuff where I don't have a lot of real expenses yet. But as I looked at the numbers, it's like, wow, this does not have long-term viability. And there wasn't a way that I could see getting it there. And so for me, it's just that life change. This could also be moving. It could be getting married, getting divorced. It could be any number of things, adding children to your family if you don't have kids. There's a lot that can happen in your personal life that we need to accept the fact that is going to affect the way our startups are running. If you're more on the technical side like me, you like to pretend that's not true. That, no, I just need to carve out some time to write some more code and make some more phone calls and deal with some support stuff and make sure my numbers and my books are good. But at the end of the day, what's going on in your life will actually directly affect the amount of time and energy and resources you have for what you're doing. And we just need to be acknowledge that. It could mean that there's certain things we can do to pull back for a season, for a time with our startup, that we can either look to bring somebody in who can complement that. But all that is something we just need to be aware of. So as you're going through life, realize that is going to make a difference. Does anybody here have anything that they've noticed as you've been doing your startups that has kind of been either flags or things that you ran into? You're like, wow, yeah, we needed to make a change. We saw this, and Yeah, excellent. Internal funding is a big one. So how long's your runway? How long can you survive without making any money on your company yet, or not being to the point where you can pay yourself? My company makes money, but I don't get paid yet. That's always exciting. And how long can you sustain that? Do you have other things you can do? Do you have outside investment, things like that? So, Aaron? Yes, and that can be a double-edged sword, by the way. But yeah, I mean, your customers will, in my experience, our customers have been fantastic. They give us great feedback. I love getting to do the sales stuff with my team because I pick up on little things that they comment on during that process that help me better understand the direction we need to go in the future. And oftentimes, I mean, one of the pivots we made, we actually changed our name 2 years in because I was talking with a couple of our customers and I was like, hey, so how's it going? Like, do you guys talk about the software? Do you ask people if they're using it? And they're like, yeah, we totally ask them. I'm like, hey, are you using the database? I'm like, the what? Like, this is our company. Like, you know the name of the software, right? And they're like, yeah, it's really confusing though. It's like some number. Because 1905 was the name of the company. And they're like, and it was in that moment I'm like, oh no, this guy's like a champion of my software and he calls it the database. That's really bad news. And so, you have that conversation 2 or 3 times and you're like, wow, okay, we can do better than this. We can come up with something that people can actually remember and use in a sentence.
Well, I think it's a good point. We can go to the next slide too. It'll slide in. But how do you know when to pivot? I mean, if you read through what Paul just said, it's listening, right? It's a lot of listening. And again, it's kind of getting rid of that hubris of your idea enough to hear comments like that and know that you need to take action. So you guys, I mean, if you just have an idea or if you're actually out there, listening is probably the most underrated skill for an entrepreneur, for sure. For a lot of people, I guess, in life. But, so how to pivot well. I guess this kind of goes along with what I was saying. Known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Anyone know who that was? All right.
Yeah, that was like the money quote from that whole like period of politics. I was like, what? That's crazy.
Aaron, to your point in terms of, and my point earlier in terms of focus, so boiling the ocean is a common reference to trying to do too much. And what people don't understand about having lots of functionality is that your marketing message gets completely lost, regardless of how cool your technology is. So my analogy is your customer, you're trying to listen to your customer and he says he wants to cut something, and you hand him a Swiss Army knife, right? He didn't say he wanted his nails filed. He didn't say he wanted a magnifying glass. He didn't say he had a splinter and he needed tweezers. He needed to cut something, plain and simple. You need to have that kind of focus. In our previous venture, and why we killed it, did not have any focus at all. We were so broad, trying to do too many things, and to contrast that with Approve, we now walk into meetings, and inside of a minute, people get it. In the second minute, they start relating to us the exact pain that they have. In the third minute, they are realizing that we solved that pain. And it's done. So, I mean, I come across a lot of startup ideas that are fun, interesting, catchy, but they don't solve pain. They really don't. And I think to really get noticed in this world where half the people in this room are doing a startup, okay? There's thousands out there. And to get noticed and to get paid for it, you need to solve some problem. Test, test, test. This is actually a mantra that has been drilled into my head from my father, along with, he was a Marine. Marines are taught to make decisions on like 60 or 70% of information. You're never going to be 100%, right? So take your idea, get that MVP, get out there, put your ego in check, and test, 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 pivot, pivot, pivot. Approve started off going after a very different market segment than we are now with businesses. And it took a lot of people telling me that I wasn't seeing the signs, the right signs, for me to recognize that. But I had to listen. If it was up to me, I'm sure I would have just been like, my ego's so sweet, I'm just going to go do this and just be done. Which a lot of people here do because we think our ideas are so freaking great. Again, it's not up to us, it's up to the customer.
Yeah, and let me jump in here too on that foggy startup world. I like that analogy because the reality is when you're doing the startup, essentially the one way I like to think of it is I have this idea that's going to be amazing, it's going to be valuable, and people are going to love it. And then you kind of walk into this big, hazy, foggy forest, and you have no idea really where you're going. You have your idea, and I think that's why we hold on so tightly to it, because it's kind of the only thing we really know. And there's so many assumptions that come with that idea. You're assuming that they feel a certain pain. You're assuming that they're doing certain things in their business or in their personal life or whatever, that they even have the need that you're meeting. And so as you're going through it, if you don't have ways to disperse that fog or to get other people in there who can give you good feedback, you're just gonna wander forever through that. You're never gonna find the mountain that you need to climb to get above it to really get traction, really see where you're going and see how that all comes together. And so for me on this foggy piece, having trusted peers, and this would generally not be family members, not be friends, especially not your mom, because your mom's gonna be like, "Oh my gosh, you're so smart."
No, my mom was like, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Well, there's that too. There's that too. Maybe it's just the passive, like, yeah, it sounds good, I think. But finding people who really get it, finding people who are maybe in your target audience, finding people that have been in the business world and been around that can quickly tell what are the big things you're going to run into very quickly, because they're going to help you avoid a lot of pain, a lot of time, and resources. And again, I said this before, but the best thing you can do for your startup is give it the time it needs to succeed. And if you can do anything you can do to cut out a month, 6 weeks, a whole quarter of time that takes you to discover you need to change something or pivot, you just gave yourself a much better chance at succeeding. And so all of this stuff we're talking about, at the end of the day, it's wanting you to really be self-aware as much as possible, because that's going to give you the chance to make the necessary tweaks and adjustments and changes to really be successful. And at the end of the day, like, the reason I'm up here doing this is because I want Minnesota to rock the tech scene. And this is what it takes to do it. It's saying, here's a great idea, what do you think? Oh, we need to lop the arm off the left side of my child that is my startup. Like, well, if that's what it takes, sure, like, let's do it. And that may sound brutal, but the startup world is incredibly brutal. I remember the day I deleted like 4,000 lines of code from my software because having it in there actually made it harder to sell my software. Like, just hear that. I had to delete entire modules from my code base because having them in there drove customers away. And the second I removed them, we got more customers. So it's not a matter of, oh, if we just had this, if we just had that, if we just had that. That's like where I go because I'm super technical and geeky and programming. But
how many people have written a business plan? Okay, so there's many theories on this. I fall on the line of I would never write one again, me personally. So everyone's familiar with agile software development. I don't think people are as adept at looking at their startup with an agile, almost market development mindset as well. So, doing a startup's an experiment. Pivoting is a part of the process. You need to expect it to happen versus having this kind of concrete blueprint in front of you and being like, blinders on, good to go, never look back.
yes, and so the dispersing the startup fog early and often, there's a lot of ways to do this. I love the testing piece. There's a lot of ways to test. You guys did something really great.
Yeah, so we came up with the idea for Approve. and I decided to make an investment in one of those little cartoony videos, right, that everyone loves. So I said I didn't do a business plan, but I did do this video. And I could explain my company in a 1.5-minute video to someone by just sending them a link. It's better than a PowerPoint. I didn't make them read an executive summary. The video went through a use case scenario. It was a guy hating expense reports and the manager hating signing, the response was overwhelming. Oh my God, this happened to me last week. Oh my God, our CFO keeps his credit card on a shared drive. And we not funny, 130-person company. So we kept hearing pain, pain, pain. That video was my test. That's how I tested the market. I didn't write one line, or Neil and Cullen didn't write one line of code. But once I hear that, that was my confidence in this idea, that I was solving a real problem and that it was worth investing in, it was worth building a team around, it was worth trying to do sales for. Test, test, test. And everyone does those videos maybe at the end, right, of your development, and then you put it on your website and whatnot. I'm saying flip that on its head. It's the best testing tool I've ever used. We used a company called Wise Owl, WYZOWL. They're in the UK. A minute costs something like $2,300. A 1.5 minutes, it goes up. It was a great. There's a number of companies that do this.
I checked with somebody in Boston, and $18,000.
There's a number of companies that do it in very different ways. This was the most cost efficient for me, and they managed the process really well. So, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it's listening to your customers. So Michael and the Approved team, they're sending that video out to people who are going to be their customers. And getting that feedback from them is critical because that's affirming or denying the assumptions that they've made about the market.
Yeah, and to me that comes back to pain, and maybe I'm inventing a phrase here, but pivot toward pain. If you're going after a market, find the pain. That's where you turn your ship. Go after it.
Yeah, I think one of the skills that I've developed has been the ability to be in a situation with customers or potential customers and hear the things that are causing pain that they don't even understand. Like they may not even be consciously aware that we could create a solution for. That I actually could go back with my team and come up with something that alleviates that pain. And so it's it's listening. It's going, it's interesting that they said such and such. And being aware of that. Because a lot of time they're quick throwaway statements that people will make.
Neil, did you just hashtag pivot toward pain? Because I think we should trademark that. That's pretty good. All right. Okay, good.
All right, the goal is cream. Cash rules everything around me. What up, Wu-Tang Clan? I know I'm in good company here, right? Yeah, so there's like one other person here who... That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. See, I was a freestyle skier. It's all extreme and stuff, doing flips. But that's the goal, right? We get into business, and maybe for you it's... And I'm being silly with the whole cream thing, but the idea is you want market traction. You want to change the way people work, the way people do something, interact with their peers, do business, do expense reports. You actually want to transform something. If that's not what your goal is, like that's fine, but I think you're leaving a lot on the table when you do that, because again, it's that passion, right? Passion will get you in the door at least. Then it comes down to execution, and do you actually deliver on what you're passionate about? There are other issues there, but if you can at least get people excited in a direction, then you've got something there, because they're willing to talk about it. They're willing to invest in it financially or with resources, invest relationally by telling others about it. Those are all huge indicators that you're onto something. And so as you're kind of navigating through this, I'll share a little bit from Fresh Find. So about a year ago, we were averaging about 1 to 2 new subscriptions a month. Our churn rate's been very, very low, which has been fantastic. I think we only lost like 5 customers all of last year, and I think we've lost 1 so far this year. So I really like that. Those are good numbers. But we made a couple strategic changes. We changed internally how we talk about what we do, to make it more focused. So instead of being this big kind of multifaceted tool, and Fresh Find does a lot of things, we innovate technology for nonprofits. That's what we do. And specifically within that space for churches and religious groups. We don't want you to spend $1 on doing that yourself. One, you probably don't have the expertise. That's not why you went into the nonprofit space. That's generally my joke. You know, most people don't start nonprofits or churches because they love managing data. It's true. And so let us do that. And we take care of you. And even focusing it that much, and not even talking necessarily about the features of what we do, people get it. And then they're receptive to what we're doing, and they want to know how we're there to help. And that gives us the opportunity to talk about what we actually do.
So after I'd send this video out during my test phase, this is the interactive portion, what do you think was the next question out of my mouth when someone said they liked it? Exactly. And I don't even think that question is asked a lot because people are afraid to hear the answer. I asked that. I got follow-ups the month after meetings asking me when it was ready. I got feedback from a guy breaking out the time that his team and he takes every month to do requisitions and expense reports and equating it directly to productivity dollars. I mean, these are the signs that, again, pointed us toward, we pivoted toward pain and we went right after it. But money to me is the validation that you're doing something right. That in our capitalist world, it's how you prove value, you know? I mean, we just delivered this service to this guy. I believe that we should get paid for it. So
yeah, and at the end of the day, it's getting that first paying customer is extremely hard. Yep. Getting to the point where you have revenue coming in, it is the ultimate sense of validation. We got our first subscriber 2 months after I cut the first line of code. And within about 4 months, I had kind of 6 customers on board to kind of help us build out the main functionality of our software. Get customers early and then listen to them. Because again, they're the ones using your software, they're the ones finding value in your software, and they're the ones who will help you fine tune it to get more value. And then that only makes it more appealing to the broader market. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna make, we've got about 5 minutes left here. And so I'm gonna make 2 quick plugs. One, find mentors. Find them. How many of you running a startup right now have business mentors you speak to on a regular basis? Less than every 2 months. Awesome. That was less than half the hands that were up at the beginning when we asked how many of you were running startups. Find mentors. Pay for good mentors. Find people that are actually experienced in what you're doing. There's a lot of fantastic people and fantastic groups in the city here that do that. I particularly enjoy the Mesa group because I'm a part of it. If you can get in, it's fantastic. So I would encourage you to at least look at that. But realize there's a lot of people who have a lot of desire to see the tech scene here grow. And so pursue people. You know, hit people up on LinkedIn and ask them if you could grab lunch with them or coffee with them and get advice and feedback. You'd be surprised how many people will say yes to that.
Yeah, and I would just close with, you know, pivoting's a part of this process. Don't be afraid to do it. And almost anticipate it happening. And every other session we've had kind of actually teased you up to pivot. Are you being agile? Do you have a great tech co-founder? A lot of the other stuff that we learned today could really help you pivot fast, test again, and repivot.
So we've got a few minutes left. I'd love it if anybody has a story about pivoting from their company or from their own experience. I mean, my big pivots with FreshFind have been changing the name. That got us a lot more traction. And then we updated our pricing model, and doing that, making that very clear. We went from 1 to 2 new subscriptions a month to about 5 to 6, which is a substantial bump. And we have a couple more pivots we're in the work on doing, trying to get that number up substantially higher than that still. So
I'll just say too, the death pivot, had I not done that, Approve would not exist. And so killing something can be, it has to be done sometimes. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Sometimes an idea comes to the end of the road. There'd be no Foo Fighters if Nirvana hadn't died. It was very liberating for me, very liberating. Yep. And it gave me the ability to vocalize these mistakes, to step back and look at the things we did wrong and try to correct them the next time.
Good question. I think I try to always be aware of when pivots might be necessary. I'm always listening to, I read every single support ticket that comes in. I read every single lead that comes in. And I try and sit in on a number of our sales presentations every month, simply because I want to be listening to what's going on in the market, what are our customers saying, what are potential customers saying. But that at the same time, I have to be absolutely committed to the direction we're going in. And so it's this weird thing where I have to be 100% dedicated, especially for my team. Oh my gosh, if my team didn't think I knew what I was doing, that would be the end of it. But I also, at the same time, I have to always be listening. Am I missing something? Is there some subtext that I might be not hearing in what's going on, that if I were to catch it, it could mean everything for our company.
I would say, you're talking about a name? Well, I would say take yourself out of the equation. Talk to your customers.
Yeah, that's the test part.
Talk to people who you think would use whatever your tool is, if they're consumers or businesses. Poll your, whoever. Take yourself out of the equation. If you come up with the right questions and the right research, the right name will emerge, and it'll be, based upon their feedback, not yours.
Neil?
The word pivot gets thrown around in various circles anyway. Well, first of all, is there any reason to define it? If you were going to define it like it matters, what is a pivot and what's not? Give some examples, but how do I know whether I'm just making a day-to-day business?
Right, it is broad in terms of business model is a big pivot, right? Going from subscription-based service to a transactional-based service. A pivot into a different market. I'm going after small business, and now I believe that we should be enterprise. Or I was going after bike shops, and now I'm going after this. So there's a market pivot.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the way I look at it is it's a directionality thing. If I'm improving the way some functionality in my site works, in my service works, if I'm updating the website, like that isn't necessarily a pivot. But if where I'm looking on the horizon changes, when we went from creating a CRM for churches to innovating technology for nonprofits, that's a meaningful gaze difference, if that makes sense. So for me, it's where are you looking on the horizon? If your eyes have shifted across the horizon to somewhere else, you probably pivoted. And that will result in ripple effects. Your messaging will change, your software may change, things will happen differently because you're now looking somewhere else. For me, that's how I tend to look at it. So the business model stuff, how your software works. Is it mobile? Is it web? Like all that fits kind of with that gaze piece, I think. So it is 4:20, which if you remember earlier is beer. So we're going to let you guys go for that. Thank you very much for coming. Michael and I are going to also grab the beers. Because, yeah, why not? And yeah, we just hope you guys got something out of this that was meaningful. I enjoyed it.
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah.